I'm 106 years old, and people ask me every day, what's the secret to happiness? They think I'll say health, money, or luck. But here's the truth. Happiness isn't something you receive. It's a decision, and most people spend their entire lives waiting to make it. Listen carefully, because this might change how you live. People often lean closer when they hear my age, lowering their voice as if I'm about to reveal something sacred. They ask the same question with wide eyes and hopeful smiles, convinced that I must possess some hidden formula for a long and happy life. They expect a simple answer, something measurable or repeatable, something they can copy. They want to hear about food, habits, routines, or discipline. And yes, I've eaten carefully, walked often, and treated my body with respect. But none of those things explain why I wake up each morning with peace in my chest instead of bitterness. The real secret has nothing to do with how long I've lived and everything to do with how I've chosen to live. It took me decades to understand that joy is not a reward given at the end of a good life. It is a decision made daily, sometimes hourly, often in moments when everything inside you resists making it. Most people believe happiness arrives once life cooperates. They wait for better circumstances, better people, better timing. They postpone joy until the future feels safe. But the future is never guaranteed, and waiting becomes a habit that quietly steals entire years. I learned that life doesn't pause its hardships while you prepare yourself. It keeps moving forward whether you are ready or not. So you either move with it or you spend your days chasing a version of happiness that never arrives. Choosing joy does not mean ignoring reality or pretending pain doesn't exist. It means deciding that pain will not be the only voice guiding your actions. It means refusing to hand control of your inner world to events you cannot change. The greatest lie we tell ourselves is that happiness belongs to a later version of us, one with fewer problems and more certainty. In truth, happiness belongs to the present moment, available only to those willing to claim it without conditions. My understanding of this truth was shaped by loss early in life. I learned quickly that stability is fragile, and that comfort can disappear without warning. Childhood did not shelter me from reality. It introduced me to it. Illness took away someone I loved before I fully understood love itself. Emigration placed me in an unfamiliar world where language, security, and familiarity were replaced by survival and silence. Work came early, responsibility even earlier. I learned discipline not from books, but from necessity. My hands carried the evidence of effort long before my mind understood its purpose. As I grew older, I believed endurance alone was enough to earn peace. But life taught me otherwise. Love entered my life briefly and left without explanation, tearing a hole that routine could not fill. Responsibility grew heavier as grief grew deeper. Later, everything I had built through patience and persistence vanished in a single moment, reminding me how temporary achievement truly is. These experiences did not make me special. They made me human. Everyone encounters loss in different forms, but loss alone does not define a life. What matters is how you allow it to shape you. Suffering can narrow your vision until the world feels hostile and unfair, or it can widen your understanding of others' pain Hardship can turn you rigid and defensive, or it can soften you into someone capable of empathy. Pain is unavoidable, but bitterness is optional. I learned that survival without reflection leads to emptiness, while survival with intention builds wisdom. Every difficult chapter presented a silent question. Would I become hardened or humane, closed or open, resentful or resilient? These decisions were not made once. They were made repeatedly, often after failing to choose well the first time. There was a period in my life when anger felt like strength. It gave me a sense of control when everything else felt unstable. I carried it proudly, believing it protected me from further loss. But anger is a heavy companion, and eventually it demands payment. It isolates you, exhausts you, and quietly reshapes the people around you. I did not notice the damage at first because pain can be loud, while consequences are often silent. It took the innocent confusion of a child to hold up a mirror I could no longer avoid. In that moment I realized my grief had grown teeth, and it was biting the very people I loved most. I understood that healing does not begin when pain disappears. It begins when responsibility returns. I could not change what had happened, but I could change what happened next. Choosing to soften did not erase sorrow, but it redirected its energy. I learned that love is not the absence of pain. It is the courage to remain gentle despite it. From that point forward, I stopped asking why life had treated me unfairly and started asking who I wanted to be in response. That shift transformed everything. I learned to let sadness exist without letting it dominate every interaction. I learned to show up even when my heart felt heavy. I learned that strength is not measured by how much you endure in silence, but by how much kindness you can still offer while enduring. Healing is rarely dramatic. It happens quietly, in choices no one applauds. It happens when you decide to speak gently instead of sharply, to listen instead of withdraw, to love instead of protect yourself behind walls built from pain. Later in life, I was reminded that joy does not expire with age and that connection often arrives when expectations have been lowered. Love returned unexpectedly, challenging not only my comfort but my courage. The reaction of others revealed how deeply society clings to rules about timing, appearance, and belonging. I was judged not for causing harm, but for choosing happiness outside familiar boundaries. For the first time, I clearly saw how much energy people spend managing the opinions of others. I had already lost too much time to fear to surrender any more to it. I chose companionship over conformity, laughter over loneliness, truth over approval. That choice brought years of shared joy, growth, and understanding. It taught me that love does not require permission, and that fulfillment is deeply personal. Judgment fades, but regret lingers. Letting go of the need to explain yourself is one of life's great freedoms. Other people's discomfort does not mean you are wrong. Often it simply reflects their own unexamined fears. When loss returned, as it inevitably does, it arrived without cruelty. It left behind gratitude rather than resentment. I understood then that love is never wasted, regardless of how it ends. The measure of a relationship is not its permanence, but its presence. Time shared fully is never time lost. Accepting this truth allowed me to grieve. without despair, and remember without bitterness. Love, when chosen bravely, leaves strength in its absence. Today, happiness feels uncomplicated. It lives in moments most people overlook because they are chasing something louder. I find joy in ordinary rituals, familiar sounds, and quiet connections. These were always available to me, but I did not always notice them. I once believed happiness waited at the end of achievement, that it would arrive once everything aligned. Now I know happiness exists only where attention rests. Gratitude is not a feeling that appears automatically. It is a discipline practiced daily. You train your mind to notice what remains instead of what has been lost. Life does not become easier with this understanding, but it becomes lighter. Pain still visits. Loss still arrives. But misery no longer controls the narrative. Choosing joy is not denial. It is defiance. It is the refusal to let suffering define the quality of your remaining days. Time is the only resource that never renews itself. Spending it on resentment is the greatest waste imaginable. Life is not perfect, and it never will be, but it is profoundly beautiful when seen clearly. Beauty exists not in the absence of hardship, but in the willingness to keep showing up with an open heart. You do not need permission to choose joy. You do not need ideal conditions. You only need awareness and courage. Happiness is not waiting for you somewhere ahead. It is available now, in whatever moment you are reading this. And choosing it today may be the most important decision you ever make.